My daughter's name is Ophelia Lennox. And Lennox actually stands for strong willow tree. And I believe that's what she is.
What language is Lennox?
I believe it is like Old English.
Okay. Because it's beautiful, like Ophelia Lennox.
We named her Ophelia because we love New Orleans. And we didn't name her after this song, but there's a video for the song Ophelia by the Lumineers.
Yeah.
And
Ophelia.
Yeah, it's filmed in New Orleans, and we just love that city so much.
Oh, it's fun to get to know the meanings behind names. So,
welcome to Still a Part of Us, a place where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter.
And I'm Lee. We are grateful you joined us today. Please note that this is a story of loss and has triggers.
Thanks to our lost parents who are willing to be vulnerable and share their children with us.
If you're listening to this podcast, just know that on our YouTube channel there are pictures and videos that are related to the stories that are being shared.
Subscribe and share it with a friend that might need it, and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us.
Well, wonderful. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you so much for taking time to come and talk to us about your beautiful daughter, Ophelia. For the listening audience, tell us a little bit about yourself. We've chatted a little bit, but tell us about you, your terrible soccer fandom.
My name is Stephen. We'll start there. I love watching soccer. I love all things soccer. I grew up playing soccer. My favorite team is Chelsea. And then, I live in New York City, the greatest city in the world. I get to enjoy some time up in the mountains of New York State as well. I love working. That's my real passion in life.
Well, wonderful. Thank you again so much. Thank you. And it has been quite fun, and not just working. You also told me that you loved riding your motorcycles. So
yes, I do love riding motorcycles as much as my wife hates it. I love it.
Steven's a cool cat, so he does a little bit of everything. It seems like being awesome and being there. So, well, wonderful. Thank you.
Of course.
Let's start talking about your daughter, Ophelia. Let's talk about, when did you guys start planning on having a child? Was she planned? Was it a surprise? And then let's start talking about the pregnancy part.
I wouldn't say that it was a surprise, but nor were we very dedicated planning either. It was, one of those times where we wanted to have a child, but we weren't following the my wife's ovulation or anything like that. It was just kind of it just kind of happened, and we were super excited. And when she told me, it was I almost passed out, and as much as I was so excited to be a dad, it's still a shocking moment.
Yeah, it is.
We had a very quote unquote normal pregnancy, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
We're from the Woodstock, New York area, so we have a little hippie in our blood, and we decided to go the route of like not using a traditional doctor, but using a midwife and a doula. Yeah, and we decided to use a birthing center instead of having the traditional hospital. We had all these plans that my wife wanted to labor at home, and we didn't want to give birth at home, but she wanted to be the most comfortable that she could.
Yeah,
and that was the plan. and we went to see the midwife, pretty much every other week, for 6 months, 7 months, and then the last bit we were going every week. They were wonderful. It was, they were like, we don't mind if you take a few puffs off the laughing gas, and it was, we were all
Yeah.
gonna have this grand old time.
Hey, you got to make it happy for everybody.
Yeah.
Now, how close was this? The birthing center, your midwife's office, was it pretty close to where you guys were living, or you know?
So the main place where we were going to actually give birth was like 20 minutes away, 25 minutes away, still in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
But you never know with traffic in Brooklyn. It
Yeah.
could be 15 minutes, or it could be an hour and 15 minutes. But then they had a satellite office actually right in our neighborhood that we could walk to.
Well, that's nice. So it gives you just like this nice a little pause in life to go out. Not it's not a huge ordeal to go to the birthing center, but it's nice. You could probably go with your wife.
Oh, I 100%.
Yeah.
I try to go to every appointment. Of course, trying sometimes,
Yeah, it doesn't always happen.
doesn't always happen, but that's the plan. And
Yeah.
Dog might get sick, or have an important work call that you can't miss. So, but I was right there with her, every appointment that I could be.
Oh, wonderful. So you're having this quote unquote normal pregnancy.
Yep.
Anything that was concerning? Was there like, we're picking this up, or we've see this, or nothing?
No, she was going for ultrasound every 2 weeks towards the end of her pregnancy, getting ready for delivery date, and they didn't see anything abnormal or brought any concern to us.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things, you're just kind of cruising along. And
Yeah. Well, let's talk about what does happen.
Yeah.
So how far along in the pregnancy are
30
you? 30 weeks?
39 weeks.
39 weeks.
Yep.
Oh,
So we were in the window of,
yeah, you're at the finish line.
the week before, when we went to the doctor or to the midwife, she was just like, "Hey, you guys can, like, we're in that time period of, like, if you go into labor, it's not concerning us. We'll go right to the main birthing center, and we'll get it going." So we were, getting nervous, getting the finishing touches on everything at the house, and we had everything set up, and then we go to our normal appointment. It was early in the morning on the 23rd. I think we had like the first one, so we were on our way at like 8 o'clock. We decided to stop, get some bagels, because it was a good bagel spot right.
Oh, it's New York. Everywhere's got good bagels, right?
There's good ones, and then there's better ones. So this was a better one, and we get there, and we sat down. She went and did her like urine sample, and then they took her weight and everything, and then we go into the room, and there's our usual midwife, and then she's got somebody else, because just in case she's not there, or something happens, we have another familiar face. It's not just
a new person.
So we start the usual, how you been feeling, and my wife Victoria, she was like, "Oh, I had some stomach issues," and they said, "Oh, that's kind of kind of normal, for somebody who's 9 months pregnant.
Yeah.
It's part of it. We moved into, like let's check the heart rate, and never before, during the pregnancy was it hard to find the heartbeat. So they started to try, and they, after 6-7 minutes, they said you need to go straight to the hospital. So the hospital, there's a hospital not very far away. So we got into an Uber, and we were at the hospital within probably 10 minutes, and the birthing center had already phoned ahead. They knew we were coming, so we went right upstairs to the birthing unit, and that's when they did an ultrasound to confirm that they could not find a heartbeat. And yeah, it was really hard because we tried so hard to do this without a hospital involved, and then at the hardest part, we were in this place where we didn't want to ever really be.
It wasn't what you had planned. Like
No.
this whole situation, there was nothing that you even planned for.
No. It's the other hard part was having to leave my wife for a few moments so I could go and call her mom and her sister, and call my parents as well, and tell them. But the whole time was my wife is sitting in there, alone. So then they had to begin induction.
Now, when you guys went initially into the birthing center, was she having labor contractions, or did they have to start the whole labor process at the hospital?
They had to start the entire labor process at the hospital, and it's some labors can go quickly, some labors can last a long time, and in the grand scheme of things, it probably is not. Her labor with Ophelia was not a long labor, but under the circumstances, it was the longest, 14 hours of my life. In that time, her mom, drove into the city from upstate. My brother drove down, and also my good friend, who was at the time a pastor in our church, also came to the hospital, because you, in times of stress, and you forget things, and we totally forgot about our dog. And I was like, hey, can you go let our dog out, please?
Well, you probably weren't expecting to be doing this today. So
yeah.
Now you mentioned you started in the morning, you went to the birthing center, they sent you to the hospital. Was that about midday? And then you started the laboring?
We got to the hospital probably about 9:30 in the morning, 9:45, somewhere in that ballpark. And then we started laboring at 10:45, 11.
And then you mentioned that it was about a 14-hour labor. And so this was
somewhere in that ballpark.
early in the morning, probably-ish.
She was actually delivered on the 23rd, so the same day,
Uh,
like 11:55.
oh,
Yeah. So
it's a long day.
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
long emotional day.
yeah. My wife's best friend, or yeah, she came and she asked if we needed food or anything, and my wife, for some reason, those frozen fruit popsicles.
Yes, those are pretty good.
Yeah, they are pretty good. She wanted a coconut one. I don't know.
Eh,
So her friend went to the store, and oddly enough, the first store a little bodega she went to had coconut frozen fruit. So
well, that's a good friend right there.
yeah. And then my wife, she chose to take some medications as well, to help with the pain and to help speed things along as well. And that was also one of those things that we had long discussed that we weren't going to do. But then in the time, it's
Yeah, there's a lot of other things that go on that there's no way to plan for, there's no way to decide beforehand. When the horrible news that your child no longer has a heartbeat, things change.
things change very, very quickly. So then she was born, and she she was beautiful. She is beautiful, and we spent some time with her, and I wish it. I wish that we spent more time with her. We You don't really understand the protocols of being in a hospital and everything, and the hospital where we were at, they didn't really explain it to us that well, but we spent a few hours with her. Then the nurses came and they took her away, and it's crazy that those 2 hours are the only time that we will ever get to be together on this earth. And it's even now, it's a scary thing.
It really is one of those situations that it's impossible to describe to somebody who has not gone through and experienced them themselves. Every beautiful emotion you have about having a child, holding your daughter, for me, holding my son, the feeling of love and pride and joy, also mixed in with pain and suffering, doubt and worry and everything. It's so beautiful and yet so sad.
Yeah, I think that my wife and I, we were both pretty lucky growing up, that we didn't really experience loss in a way that a lot of people do. We all of our parents are here. All of our siblings are here, and I think for both of us, this was aside from an uncle or an aunt or something passing away, this was the first real like loss that either one of us lived through. And in those 2 hours, it was special, and it was beautiful to look at her and see her nose and her fingers, and in her toes. And then there's also the feeling of all the things that you were planning on doing that you're never going to be able to get to do. And like I'm lucky enough to have my daughter Willa now, but there's some days that just like I really wish I could have done this with Ophelia too.
In my counseling, me and my counselor, we've talked about how the loss of my son is not just the death of a child, it is the loss of dreams and aspirations for your child, of things that you will do with them in the future. Your daughter, Ophelia, you had dreams, you had plans that have been lost too. And your daughter, Willa, she's not a replacement for Ophelia. And your dreams for Willa is not the dreams that you had for Ophelia. They are two beautiful children, independent of each other. And it has been my talking with my counselor, it's been really hard to say the dreams I have had for Brannon have now changed, because I still have dreams for my son Brannon. They just weren't what I had initially thought that it would be. And they're not the same dreams that I have for my other children. And it is soul crushing to have suffered the loss of a child and the future that was theirs. I'm so sorry, Stephen. I'm so sorry.
I don't want to come off as cold or anything like that, and maybe this is my coping mechanism, but I firmly believe in God, and I am a Christian, and I firmly believe that God won't give me anything that I can't handle, and I feel like he put this weight on us because there's somebody else out there, if he did this to, that they wouldn't be able to handle it.
I too have similar beliefs. It's such a heavy burden.
Yes, it is.
And often people will come up and say, oh, I would never be able to do this. And I can barely do this myself, but I have to. There is no alternative. There is no alternative. I have to continue.
After, when we got, still late at night and the day is not over, or maybe the day just began, and we got transferred out of the birthing unit because it was a busy time of year for births.
Mm-hmm.
And we went into like the general hospital, and we had my brother and Victoria's friend Nadine come to the apartment, and upon my wife's request, kind of take all the stuff, the baby stuff, out of the apartment. And the next day, I let my wife, spend some time with her mom, and I came home and to let the dog out, and I can still remember it as clear as day, opening the door and realizing that the apartment and the house and is never going to be the same. And I kind of thought that about myself as well.
Yeah.
That was the 24 hours.
Such a whirlwind of events and emotions.
Yeah.
Now, did you guys have a funeral? Did you guys have a service for Ophelia?
So we decided to have Ophelia cremated, and my boss, he's also a very very dear friend of mine. He gave us a tea jar to keep her ashes in, and it's it's from the 6th century in China. It's very very dear to him, and now it's very dear to us for a very different reason. And we had a memorial service for her on the beach uh, here in New York, and we lit paper lanterns, and I did a traditional tea brewing ceremony. It's the same one when someone dies in Japan. We do this, and then later on in the year, we went on one of our favorite hikes, and we spread some of her ashes on the hike. It's this beautiful view of the Catskill Mountains, and you can see almost the entire range from this one spot. And we go there often now.
That's beautiful. And how have you and your wife Victoria, how has the years, it's been about 2.5 years, how have you kept the memory of Ophelia alive in your lives and in your family? And
It's super important to you said something before, and you said no one understands this unless they go through it. And we found out very quickly that is absolutely true. And we found that it's very important to talk about her, because a lot of people didn't want to talk about her. They wanted to kind of just like almost pretend that like she was never really like here. But we found that it's super important just to even just send text messages to each other and just say, hey, I really miss her, or hey, I wish I was doing this. And that's what the two of us did. The first year we did the March of Dimes. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it last year, just because of
the
the
pandemic.
world we're living in. But we plan on doing it, this year, and also it's important to do what we're doing now. It's the world needs to know about Ophelia Lennox.
It is pretty strange how many people try to forget our children, my child, and it seems like your child as well, be it friends, be it neighbors, just like it happened, now it's all done. But for us parents, we will never forget. And our children are our children. Our love for them is the love any parent has for their child.
That's the thing that I try to get across to people, is that it doesn't matter how long she was here. She's still our child. Like, God forbid someone loses their child when they're 40 years old. You still carry that child with you until the day you die. Like they're part of you. My wife, she also, one of her things that she wanted to really do with Ophelia was she wanted to teach her how to bake and like bake cookies, and more specifically madeleines. And so she does that quite often, and I reap the rewards because they're coming out really good now. But immediately you start eating them, and you're like, oh, this batch is really good, and then 10 seconds later you start crying because those were going to be her cookies.
Well, Stephen, the love you have for your daughter, I can truly see, and it's beautiful and it's deep. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing Ophelia with us.
Thank you for having me, and It's always nice to talk about her.
Thank you again, Stephen.